joy isn't something that we're supposed to wait to engage in when things are good and easy. It's the thing that's going to stand next to you in the hard times and make it so that you can make it through.
Welcome to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl, a podcast that illuminates the path to collective healing at the intersection of science and mysticism. This is the Point of Relation.
Dr. MaryCatherine McDonald is a trauma researcher, author, and coach who helps people reframe trauma as a strength response and reconnect with joy. She's passionate about making healing accessible, grounded, and even a little bit fun.
Welcome to Point of Relation. My name is Thomas Hübl, and I'm so happy to be sitting again. I think it's our third time with MaryCatherine McDonald. So a warm welcome, MC.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be back. I always feel like our conversations are like a visit to a new museum. Like the rest of the day, I'm so inspired and have all these ideas. And so thank you so much.
That's very lovely. I love that you brought a museum. I love museums, and I sometimes walk out of museums and think, oh, wow, it's amazing. And you see your neurons sparkling.
Yes.
And right.
You feel the neuroplasticity. Here's a window. What are we going to do with it? Yeah.
Exactly. I love that metaphor. Yeah, I have the same. I really enjoyed our previous
Oh,
conversation.
yay.
And I
Yeah.
also love that we have this organic flow because we are very passionate about similar things. So this is really lovely.
Yeah.
And so what happened since we spoke last time? I mean, you published your book, and we talked about your book in the last session, but what happened to joy, to the
Mm.
reset, to the thieves, to your deeper understanding? And I'm sure after publishing a book, a lot happened also for you
Mhm.
when more and more people deal with the material. And so maybe you
Mm.
can speak a little bit. What's your evolution?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think when we spoke last time, we ended or we mentioned grief because I kind of am always sort of grief minded and grief focused, and I've been sort of sent in that direction. It's funny when you write a book about something and then you think like, oh, this is going to be such a joyful year, and as it's turned out, this has been one of the hardest years of my life. Just all these strange circumstances. A very close friend died of cancer. And so grief was right there again. He's actually kind of featured in the book. And then, there's this just darkness over world politics right now. And that's very much taking itself out on the stage, at least in the US, very extremely. And so clients are really struggling in new ways because they've got, all of the daily regular sort of heartbreaks and traumas. And then in addition, there's this stuff happening on the global sphere. And then I had heart surgery like 6 weeks ago. And so it's been this year that has all of the thieves have been marching through my house and my head and my heart all year. And it's been actually kind of an amazing opportunity to really practice what I wrote about, which is that joy isn't something that we're supposed to wait to engage in when things are good and easy. It's the thing that's going to stand next to you in the hard times and make it so that you can make it through.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, what you said last, I'm sorry to hear about the other
Thank
things
you.
that happened
Yeah.
so far in this last year. But I first of all, I love how you bring in joy as a resource in various moments, even if
Mhm.
life is not overall always great, but that there is still a
Mhm.
possibility for joy within this, movement that we are in. And
Yeah.
and do you want to share a little bit more how you feel now? You said you had a heart surgery, so you feel
Yeah.
good. Uh,
I feel great. And again, like it's such an amazing, it was a very minor surgery. I had a couple of birth defects that they found. And it turns out I was kind of only operating at about 60% for my whole life, which is kind of crazy. So they were able to kind of go in and fix it. But the technology is so amazing that they don't have to do open heart surgery all the time. So they can kind of go through your veins. And it was a very kind of cool, I get really interested in things like that and imaging and technology. And so it was a really neat experience. And then just to be in that space of like hospitality, right? Like the hospital, hospitality. We don't think of those things together because we think hospitality, we think hotel, right? But to be taken care of in that way and sort of tended to, I don't think we have opportunities often as adults. And that was a really kind of humbling experience in a really beautiful way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. But it also, it seems to me that also there is a part in you that allows that also to be that way.
Mm,
Because not everybody in a hospital would say that
sure.
hospitality is their experience. So what do
Right.
you bring with you
Mm,
in terms of relational skills and being in a certain way, bringing a certain quality into a space that you live in this resonance, then also in the
yeah.
hospital. So that's also beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I love the way you put that. And I think again, like this is, I made this sort of silly promise that I was going to do a tiny little joy every single day on Instagram at the beginning of the year, kind of in advance of this book, and also, practice what you preach kind of thing. And I really feel that I have trained my brain and nervous system to scan for that as much as I used to be scanning for fear and bad things to happen. And so it was a lot easier with 200 or something days under my belt of that sustained practice to be in the hospital setting and be scared and be in pain and be worried, and also scanning for the beauty, the way that the nurse tends to everybody and the way that the surgeon, like the music that the surgeon picked, which was Jimi Hendrix, which was so fascinating, and the team of people that are, they're keeping you alive, literally, you're also awake during the surgery, which was so fascinating. But so I think to answer that more briefly, I was just practicing, so I was more open to it, like anything we do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's also what I feel and hear when I listen to you. Like on the one hand, you said something very important. I think that I want to underline for our listeners that it's possible to train inner states. And I think that's so important that we are not just the victims of what happens in our lives. We can literally train our inner architecture and physiology and inner plasticity to change over time. And it's not that it's a miraculous change. I practice once and it needs to stick. But as you said, after 200 days or more of practice, you could feel a shift where your attention goes, how you scan for certain things, and how that information shows up more than before. I think that's just to underline that. I think that's important for us to hear. We can train our inner happiness to a certain degree, and doesn't mean that other things. I mean, you spoke about the hospital situation. It's not that that's the
Right.
most easy beach cocktail situation, and
Yeah.
but and then I hear a second thing when I listen to you. I hear curiosity.
Mm,
And that also strikes me. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that because you said, oh, how the nurse is working, how the surgeon is
mhm,
doing this, how the team is doing it. It's there, and how the technology works. I think that
mhm.
interest that I feel and I see in your eyes, and I see the sparkling, joy to explore something new. That
Yeah.
seems to me also part of a way to more joy in our life is that I'm curious in the process, and it's not just, oh, what's my new phone that I can buy. It's also how is the it's lovely how the nurse is taking
Mhm.
care of the patients, and I noticed
Right.
that. It's like I'm interested in that. So maybe you can
Right.
speak a little bit to the curiosity also.
Yeah. I think that's so two. I have two, well, I have 2,000 things to say, but two, two things I wrote down was I think in addition to the practice making kind of training our brain to scan for different things, I also think we, we miss practice. We skip it. We think if I understand something, then my behavior will change. but you can understand something for your, for decades, and it doesn't come out in your behavior unless you have a practice to sort of scaffold the knowledge and the understanding. And so I think because I think I see so many people so hard on themselves when they say, I understand this, why am I still behaving in this other way? And it's because, of course, you are, right? The understanding doesn't automatically lead to the behavior change. And the curiosity, I mean, I think, what else is there in the world? I think it's such a huge value for me that it's almost hard to put language to. In my philosophical training, I was so enamored with phenomenology, which is just the study of what it is like, essentially. And so in any situation, and again, that's a training, right? Like when you start thinking about that question, then you train yourself to think about it in different situations. And so when I'm in a hospital setting, I'm thinking not only what is it like for me, right? But what is it like for the nurse? What is her day like? Like she has these two very different patients she's tending to at the same time. Like, how does she keep these things straight? And how long is her day? And does she get a break? And what does she do on that break? And, like, what is her stress level? And what's her family like? And what is it like when she gets home? Like all of these things, I think are just really, I've just value them personally. But on a neurobiological level, I think when we're in that curiosity space, we are sending more energy to that part of our brain, which kind of pulls it away from the fear center. And so I think that curiosity can be leveraged as something that can almost, I don't want to put it in like war terms, but it can combat anxiety. It can counter anxiety because if you can
Mm.
click into curiosity, you're on a different energetic wavelength, so you could put it that way. Don't you
Mhm.
think?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's why I picked it up before, because when I saw you speaking, I saw your expression and I thought, oh, that's so beautiful. It's like, because I believe our curiosity is a way to participate in the world. When we are curious about something, we don't feel entirely separate. And when we are in strong fear states, we often feel separate. We feel alone, we feel separate, we feel we need to deal with this ourselves. And curiosity is very different, where it's like I'm participating in how the nurse is doing this. Why does this surgeon choose this music? It's interesting. And then but I'm part of something when I'm curious. And that loop is relational. Is deeply relational because I notice things. And also, I don't know how much that was part of your book, The Joy Reset, but that curiosity, I think, is such an important part to be able to experience joy. I need to be with the
Yeah.
world, and be
Oh,
engaged.
yeah.
And so when you spoke, I thought that that's beautiful. That's very obvious how your curiosity became a resource for you while you were in a hospital. And I think that's very important to see that this seems like small things, but when I feel you, I can feel the joy. When you talk about the technology, I feel you. Oh, it's interesting. I like it. But this is a resource, and I believe that also contributes to your healing process.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because I think instead of being sort of in the victim mode, which is very easy to be in, right? You're in some sense like more disempowered than in any other situation, right? And objectified in a way, right? You're an object that is being kind of handled and dealt with, and that can be very scary and violating and make you feel, like you said, isolated. But curiosity, I'd never thought about that before. It plugs you in. And so it peels away at least some of that disempowerment and puts you in a more empowered space. I'm plugged in and relational and connected to the people who are helping me, like that is really powerful. And I don't talk about that in the book. I talk about imagination, but I kind of wish I had taken it in this direction because I think I don't know. Do you think curiosity is a type of imagination? Maybe.
Yeah, and it is the fuel of imagination, maybe, because it goes beyond it. It's like it's more essential that to be curious means I'm interested in the world. I'm interested. I can be curious. I'm also the world, so I can be curious about myself. I can be curious about you. I can be curious about how you write things down while we speak, and what you're writing down, why you're writing. It's like, but if you're in it, you're present. You're more present, and you're less. As you said, it kind of remedies a bit this victim state where I collapse back into myself, and I feel the world is a little bit at the distance, and curiosity dispels partly the distance.
What keeps me going and what makes me have hope is that as you do some work and you loosen things up a little bit and you start to get a sliver of self, things start to improve very quickly. And so it is my belief that every time you and I are able to unload these burdens and are able to help restore health to people, it has big ripple effects. It's not just impacting the person in our office, but it's actually healing something at a much higher collective level.
Many of the things that we discussed, the individual work, the ancestral legacy burden, the collective legacy burden, and self, these are all aspects, chapters of our upcoming book. And I felt when we decided to do this book together, I felt that there's literally like an opening of a healing map that I think makes a lot of sense, obviously, to both of us. But it also is an invitation for many practitioners to step in and get inspired and take this into their own works, in their own expressions, to develop like a larger context for exactly what you said, that the inner work and the inner change and unburdening becomes also a more unified world.
I mean, that is the goal of the book, is to inspire.
To celebrate the publication of their new book, Releasing Our Burdens, join Thomas, Internal Family Systems founder Dr. Richard Schwartz, and Sounds True founder Tammy Simon on December 2nd for a free live event, From Burden to Belonging, Healing Trauma Across Generations. Richard and Thomas will address how we can begin cultivating presence in everyday life, become more resilient, and help create a more flourishing world. Visit the link in this episode's show notes or go to www.releasingourburdens.com/event to register for free. We hope to see you there.
I'm curious what you say about this, because every time I work with somebody on some inner wound, what often presents itself is, of course, where the trauma sits, there is relational distance. And so when I'm afraid and something happened to me and I'm afraid and I pulled back to stabilize myself in the fear and hold the fear somehow, then today when I talk about this, like the distance shows up. And when I sit with somebody, I see, oh, the person pulls out of the relational space and goes into like a kind of a separate state. But that separate state means the world is at a distance. So, and then all kinds of reactivity can come out of this. But when you're curious, you're actually more feeling, looking, finding out, it's not, they go together in a way, so it takes you out of that state into another part of your brain, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think about in my earliest sort of memory of dissociation, I remember, I think as an adult, revisiting that and thinking about the metaphor of a cave. Like I felt like I was being sort of shot back into a cave, and you have that strange thematic experience where the voices get further away. You're standing in the same place, right? But your vision narrows, and your sense of hearing narrows, and people sound like they're far away. And that's a very safe place in a way, right? Because we dissociate because of an adaptation. We need to take ourselves out. But then to have the awareness of, okay, as an adult, okay, I've got shot back into the cave. How am I going to get out? Right? Because this is something that that I've thought about personally a lot, but also comes up with a lot of clients. Dissociation is really tricky to deal with, right? Once you're in it, you can have the awareness that you're in it as an adult, but then what? And I loved the idea of curiosity as sort of a way out, because I kind of imagine and maybe this is just individual, or maybe we can generalize from the individual, but I imagine my little child self sort of getting, curious about something, the world, even of the cave, right? And then going, maybe closer to the opening instead of way back in the back. And then what is that light out here? And being kind of drawn back out into the world.
Exactly. Exactly. That's beautiful. Because what we do in sessions when that happens, and we also call this caving, like the cave, to be in the
Yeah.
cave.
Oh,
And
wow. Yeah.
and first of all, to honor the intelligence, why that was very needed. That was the best option in a certain situation or a series of situations. This was better than anything else. I think that's important. But often when people notice, wow, that's not just a mistake that I feel so stuck in myself, that actually served something, then we are not looking at how to get rid of this. Then we can look at, oh, how can I get to know my intelligence? So I become curious. And then I often ask people to say, okay, when you feel that distance now with me here, because the person touches that place, and then you say, okay, what is if you allow yourself to be consciously at that distance? Be in the cave, but let's be conscious about it. So it's not an unconscious pattern anymore. It becomes a conscious pattern. And then we inject some choice. And what often happens, and if I, as a facilitator, feel the person in that state, so we actually begin to have a relationship to the cave together. So it's not alone. And that attunement often helps people to make a step, and then the distance becomes half, maybe. And then you do the same again. And like this, slowly, until we feel again, oh, we are in the present moment related, and then often fear comes up or stress or whatever comes up. What was the reason why to go into the cave in the first place? But you see that there's a movement possible. It's not just,
Right.
and that's beautiful. And I think that starts with the curiosity. Oh, my trauma response
Yes.
was in the best intelligence in
Yep.
the traumatic event.
Yep. Genius. It's a genius adaptation that happens automatically. You didn't scan and think and try to analyze and figure out. You just did that. Your system did that. And and I think also like that's so beautiful what you said. I love the attunement and sort of I imagine you standing sort of at the edge of the cave saying like, it's okay, you can stay in here. I see you. It's okay to be in the cave. Let's think about why the cave exists. Where did it come from? Why are you in there? Okay, and then maybe they come out a little bit, almost like coaxing a scared animal, right? Which we are often. But I think also understanding that like the cave, like you said, it's not the goal of healing isn't to get rid of it. You still get to use that as a tool when circumstances make it so that your system decides that's the best option in those circumstances. I think that that's such an important thing. It's not a bad place. It's not a mistake that you went there. It's an adaptation.
That's so true. And in the moment, because that happens often in a fraction of a second, and it looks like we often feel the symptoms. But when you slow down, like, and you increase the resolution because we are slowing down, we're paying attention, and we do it together. So then that cave turns into a conscious cave. And once it's conscious, it starts to have a choice. As long as it's unconscious, it looks like it's happy. Oh, my chest is just tight. My throat just got tight. I feel withdrawn. I don't feel the environment anymore because I feel like tight in myself. So on that level, it feels like it's happening to me. But actually, when you go deeper, it's not happening. There is a process that can be illuminated, and the more it releases itself, because once it's aware of itself, and that's so amazing that these things and how we can support each other to make those patterns visible, or when the eyes are withdrawn, and then you see, oh, like when the person says certain things, the eyes look actually inward instead of outward. And as long as it's unconscious, but when I ask the person and the person said, oh, yeah, I'm not looking at you, I'm looking inside. And I say, yeah. So let's be aware of that. When we talk about this topic, you're looking inside, and your attention come to me. And let's give that a permission. And then an unconscious pattern that has a lot of energy connected to our brain also is slowly shows up. But before that question, that was completely unconscious. And now it's, oh yeah, right. And then you see changes in the eyes and you feel the changes in the brain, and it's like, and maybe I want to hear from you what, like, I'm sharing some experiences to get your resonance if you see this also or differently or.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm thinking about like what would the world look like if we were trained to be attuned to that in other people? Like if that was part of school curriculum and you could notice when a friend or a sibling or your parent was in that place, right? Could what would I mean the world would completely change because then you're dealing with it on sort of the collective level instead of just on the individual level. And I think there's something about like I've been thinking so much lately about the this is going to sound right maybe, but just the importance of being witnessed and that's so critical for healing. And I think that a lot of what's going on in this country is due to a lack of witnessing. I think this comes up with grief a lot. We live in a grief phobic society, and so grief goes unwitnessed, and then that creates further trouble. But to be in that moment of, and I remember the first time this happened with a therapist who said to me, similar to what you say to your folks, like, I see that you're not here. I see that you're not looking at me. That was arresting because I think like there was this unconscious belief that like I'm handling this all by myself and nobody can see it. And
Yeah.
there's like both a power in that, but an incredible isolation because it's like I really am
Mm.
on my own here, you know?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Also, how you share your own experience, and it's true. And at the beginning, it's so strong because you see, wow, yeah, but then there is such a door that can open up through that awareness that is amazing. And you said it by yourself. And many of us have the conviction that, oh, we are on our own. When I'm afraid, when I'm sad, when I'm whatever, when I'm ashamed, I'm I'm on my own. And to make that visible, and you said something else that I see in all our groups. The one reason why they become such a healing environments is because of the capacity to be more attuned to these processes that in daily life go by unnoticed. And because they are not being witnessed,
Hmm.
we invest in their repetition compulsion
Right.
because and this is important. I think it's
Yeah.
important to know by not being aware we are also creating something. We just don't know what that is often, but it's not that that doesn't matter or doesn't have any impact just because we are mutually not aware of this kind of patterns. It nothing happens. What happens is that we invest in certain behaviors and certain also collective processes to happen again. That's what it means. And it's just important to know that. So I think what you said about um, this responsibility, maybe also of education, that we learn more about this, not in a bad way, no, in a way that there's a lot of opportunity here.
And expansion. I love that so much. We invest in the repetition compulsion because I think like that's such a perfect example because according to Freud and anyone who talks about that after, that's an individual thing. The repetition compulsion is just here. Nobody else is participating in that. That's my pathology. But the truth is that it's in the dynamic. It's not just in your individual psyche and it's not a solution. It's not something you can solve for just by yourself. It's relational.
Absolutely. I think that's actually a shadow of understanding the repetition compulsion is that there's anything like just my issue.
Right.
That in itself is, I think, a myth. There's nothing that is just yeah, maybe it's your issue, but
Right.
when we are becoming aware of it together, it becomes our mutual space. It's not
Right.
just, it's like as if it was completely isolated and separate.
Right.
Nothing in life can survive when it's completely isolated and separate. That doesn't
Right.
work. So I think that's a
Yeah.
great point that you made. Like there's a bit of an expansion to the repetition compulsion, and
Mhm.
that we also collectively. Why do many people say, "Oh, history repeats"? Yeah, because we're not
Right.
paying attention to it. That's
Right.
why it
Right.
repeats. We are not witnessing
Right.
it on a
Right.
deep enough level.
Right. And so it cannot be healed and then it will repeat. And it's so I love what you just said because I think like because the compulsion might take itself out on an individual stage, like like your body, then you assume that, okay, well, then the symptoms arise and are completed within me. But the stage is witness, there's audience, there's other people on stage with you. There's no There's no performance that is totally solo, you know?
Yeah, right. And it's also just the fact that we're so used to being so numb that we don't see this in each other doesn't mean that it's not relational. So let's say there is an unconscious pattern in you, and I am also not aware of it, then my unawareness invests in your shadow. So shadow is per definition interdependent, as well as life is always interdependent. So because without the air that we are breathing, we don't have this conversation. And without like a collective or a community or a couple relationship unconsciousness, certain things cannot continue the way they are. It's like when there needs to be some mutuality in not seeing, in not being aware, in not witnessing, that certain patterns can continue. Because if not, then the system starts to become aware of something together. And that's why I think that that's a bit of a misunderstanding, that there is something completely on its own and it's just personal.
Right. And I think when we take it out of that realm, we can have less shame about it. And I think, I don't know if this is the case for you, but there can be so much joy in the realization of your own pattern. It doesn't have to be this deeply shaming, awful thing. And it's, I think, humbling to be human and to be involved in and invested in these patterns that are interrelational. And when someone points something out that you are blind to, it can be so funny, you know? And it's
Yes.
like, I love that you saw that in me. Like, I had no idea that I was doing this thing that's totally obvious from this different perspective. And that if we could lean into that more, then we could drop some of the shame about, oh, I haven't healed because I did that behavior again, or here, here I am and I'm still messed up, or whatever, narrative we are engaging in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And in my experience, it's most of the time actually different. Yeah, of course, when we become aware of something, we also become aware of the discomfort that was part of its creation of this pattern. But what I often experience when we can share that and we can stay with it together, so we get, first of all, a relational experience that rewrites our original experience, and the liberation of the energy that is caught up in the contracting or like avoiding or numbing or whatever is going on, the energy that comes back actually often comes back as aliveness, as joy, as a newly released curiosity. So the person becomes more movable to be more engaged in the world. And so actually for most of the moments that I see in my groups or in one-on-one meetings, that is actually, joy is an outcome of the release. And it's like as if your whole being was waiting for this to be seen somewhere. And there is like often also this gratitude then to say, instead of, oh, I'm ashamed because somebody saw something in me, maybe that's the beginning, that shame comes up, but like when we go through this freedom and the joy of, wow, I was waiting for 3 decades that
Right.
something would move in this place, and now it's happening. It feels so good. So
Right.
I
And I
think,
was waiting for somebody to see me,
yes,
and now
exactly.
I'm seen. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we are talking about something very powerful here. Like when we increase our collective capacity to see, to be attuned, to feel, like the world would just become a healing space. It's like we would all begin to see more in each other. And sometimes it's not even about saying it explicitly, it's just sometimes to be conscious of something creates more movement in the space.
You can feel it. It's contagious. You're standing in the supermarket line, and everybody right now, at least here, is very furious and angry and really frustrated and stressed out. And so we meet that with conflict, and how dare you be this way? I'm just trying to do my grocery shopping and you're in the way. Now you're in a bad mood. Now I'm in a bad mood. And now my, spouse is going to be in a bad mood. And my kids are going to be in a bad mood. It's never going to end. Instead, if you could just say, there's fear here,
Mm,
so much fear that it is transmuting into rage.
mm,
And even just having that thought while you're standing in the grocery line changes the like energetic flow of the grocery line. And I really think that that is felt and changes things.
I think so too. One thing is certain, that everything is changing, which is not always comfortable because habits need to change, traumas need to open to give birth to a new version of ourselves. But our souls are calling us, and the global soul, the soul of our world, is calling us constantly to move and to mature, to evolve. And wisdom and maturity, I believe, are the capacity to relate and stay related to the challenge as much as it's possible, and turn the challenge into that growth movement. And we are not the first ones that are going through challenging times, and that wisdom of the former generations lives in us. And it needs to be activated, it needs to be connected to. And also our spiritual capacities. We have a lot of spiritual capacities that we often don't use because nobody taught us, but they're available to everybody. And that's why I believe practicing in a community is powerful. We are creating over 5 months a collective ritual of healing and growth and transformation. So our 5-month course is composed out of many, many elements. Of course, there are teaching elements, there are practices in the main course sessions that we go through. There are, of course, mentor sessions, there are bonus materials, there are live process sessions. Many people are in this transition phase. We are going from something to something new, and we don't know exactly what that is. It's a new commitment to trust the intelligence of life and the intelligence of our souls, that we know that we are on a path.
This November, join Thomas Hübl for the Path of the Courageous Soul, a 5-month online intensive to transform trauma into wisdom, fulfill your purpose, and navigate uncertain times for personal and collective evolution. Visit the link in this episode's show notes or go to pathofthecourageoussoul.com/podcast to enroll with your special $200 podcast listener discount. Today's guest, Ia Afo, is one of the expert guest speakers joining Thomas in the course. If you enjoyed this conversation and want more in-depth teachings from Ia, we encourage you to join us this fall.
First of all, just to be able to see that how often under aggression there is actually existential threat or fear. And on the other hand, also like just noticing, oh, I'm getting afraid if somebody is angry beside me. And I can say just in myself, I can say, oh, I'm getting a bit scared that the person might snap. Or whatever, it's like that I own my fear. That already creates some more freedom. And then it gives me more, because if I'm aware of it in myself, then I see, oh, actually the other person is also kind of scared underneath. And I can feel that too. So then we are already joining like an emotional resonance. And that often opens up the space. And I have often situations where some grumpiness slowly turns into like a conversation, and then the conversation becomes more open, and then it's like, and even when we think at the supermarket, oh, it's just a small moment, but it's not just a small moment, it's an important moment, because we showed up, we transmuted one state into another state that is more open. And I think these are amazing experiences. So big, like the world is not going to change just through big intervention. It changes also through small supermarket moments. But they happen very often, then they happen in our workplaces, and then we make different decisions and with our children. And so I think that's a beautiful point.
Yeah, thank you. I love the smallness of things. I think about that all the time. I think we get the calculus wrong, and the big things do matter. It's not that they don't, but I think
Of course.
we already know that, and we're just missing all these small things when they make a huge difference.
When you said what you just said is like, I want to underline this, because this is a skill to stand in an environment that is there where you feel fear and aggression, and to be able to bring in something different and be part of the transmutation, and see it. Sometimes it's enough. There's one person in a space, and it the system can change. It's like, I don't know if you saw this, there are some of the video clips that there's a person sitting in the underground, everybody is a bit grumpy, and the one person's laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And then over time, more and more people start to giggle and they start to laugh. And then like, but it's there is a kind of a viral capacity to connection, to presence, to not taking things all the time personal. You know, you don't know what happened to that person that stands there and is angry. We don't know. Maybe many terrible things happen in his or her life or their life, and now they're here and they're completely desperate. I don't know. And I can assume many things. They don't like me, or why they're unfriendly. But if I have enough space, like a little bit what you shared with the hospital, and you're, yeah, how is she doing this? And how is he doing? Like, then you change the space. If you take this into conflict resolution, it's the same skill. It's the same skill. If you walk into a space of, I don't know, war or in environments that are very stuck, and there is a capacity to create a bit more space. If you can do it in the supermarket, you know, there's the same cutout, the DNA of that. You can also take to bigger decisions that are being made. But the principle is very similar. It's a different scale, of course, but it also takes a skill to change the quality and develop a conversation and be curious. And then we walk away, like you said at the beginning, and then we had a conversation and we walk away a bit more bright
Yeah.
and grateful.
Yeah. Buoyed a little bit. Yeah. And I think that there's also often so much humor in those moments too. That's right there on the surface, right? There's all the frustration that can go this way, but then it's also, if somebody cracks the right joke, then it's the other way. And that can break that isolation and that individuality into something more collective. And I love the example of people laughing, because I think in those situations you don't even know what we're laughing at, right? It's just that it's
Exactly.
contagious. It's amazing.
Right. But it says something about transmutation, like of inner states. You know that states can change quickly if we have the right conduit for it. So that's beautiful.
I was going to ask you this huge question, because this is another thing I've been thinking about, and it goes in a kind of a completely different direction, but it's related, of course, which is this concept of evil in the presence of all this sort of possibility to transmute and change for the better. What do you think about the existence of evil?
Oh, that's a big question. I think we will need another conversation just for that. That's a big question. What I often say when I talk about collective trauma is nobody is outside of it. And I think with deeply unconscious motivations or tendencies, and the evil is at the root of it is being fueled by a lot of unconscious motivations that might look very vicious on one level, which they also are most probably, but on a deeper level, there's a lot behind that viciousness that seems to come out, or that intentionality of creating pain. And so I think it's very important, the humility that we see. It's not just there. We are all shareholders of what we call evil, if you want to call it that way. I think we're all shareholders. It's a collective company, and we're all holding shares, and we're all having some chi income, like I call it life energy, like chi dollars that we gain from that and that we invest in that. Okay, so everybody is in. It's not that, oh, here are the evil people and we are all only on the good side. Yeah, because whatever. I think that's a big myth, and that's a very dangerous way to hold it in ourselves, because like this, we often want to get rid of something that makes the issue even stronger than better. Because
Right,
I take myself, oh, I'm on the good side, of course,
right,
because I can see the evil, right?
right. And
But I
those
don't.
people are on the
Yeah,
bad
those
side.
people
Right,
are the ones, and
right.
not, no, we are great. I mean, we are really great. So
Yeah.
I think if we can dismantle this myth, first of all, and say, let's be humble here. Like, you
Mhm.
know, many of us maybe sometimes don't say fully the truth. Many of us try to round corners. Many of us try
Mhm.
to, there are different tendencies, and sometimes they are very slight, and sometimes they are
Right.
very obvious and strong. But those
Mhm.
tendencies live in all of us. And I
Mhm.
think if we host it more and are honest about it, then I can work with it more in myself. And that gives me the power to see more, because
Mhm.
those unconscious tendencies, the evil lives from being hidden
Yeah.
and to appear as symptoms. So
Yeah.
when we say, what's the remedy? That we're all becoming more aware. Because if we become
Mhm.
more aware, more grounded, more embodied, more relational, so the hidden part of life cannot stay that hidden. And the
Yeah.
more it's being revealed, what is a revelation? Is revealing something that we didn't see before. And why is it
Right.
great? Because it brings more light into the
Mhm.
shade of our world.
Right.
And so I think with the situation with the supermarket is just one example, but that works. If I really want to practice being like an ethically aligned person as much as I can,
Mhm.
then my way of relating to the supermarket situation and feeling how beautiful it is to be able to change something like that is applies to what we call evil also. You
Mm.
know, that we have in small moments, we won't change the entire world as one person, but we can
Right.
change moments and tendencies. And then
Yeah.
we say, oh, that person that did something terrible in society. Yeah, but many people, how many people did not see that coming?
Right.
How many of us miss things? We say,
Right.
oh, did you hear that what the neighbor did?
Right.
Yeah, but where have you been? You lived beside this
Right.
person for 2 years and you didn't know?
Right. Right.
So what does that mean?
Right.
Not only
And
what
what were
the neighbor
you
did.
unconsciously like not listening to or turning off?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So was that really so? And then we could make surveys around, somebody goes and shoots somewhere, or but how many people knew that person? It's not that nobody ever has seen that person before. So what happens to the social immune system, and how many small alarm bells went off here and there where people notice that actually when I think back, like there were strange moments, and through strange moments the unconscious speaks to us. It's like, oh, but often we neglect this and say, no, it's not my business, or what can I do? But maybe we have to show up more and sometimes pay more attention to these things. They are not just, as you said, merely individual issues. It lives from the unconscious of the ecosystem that very strong unconscious tendencies can perpetuate themselves. So I think you're bringing something up. I think we should have just a conversation on that.
On evil. I do too. I've been, so I was raised Catholic, right? My name is MaryCatherine. That's not surprising. But I'm not practicing anymore, kind of intentionally. But I've always been really interested in this question of evil. Like, is it a capacity that we either lean into or lean away from? Is it an energetic force that sort of possesses and takes over, right? And that comes from a very sort of Catholic framework. But then also, like, what then, right? Like, how do we live with that? But I love this framing that it's the hidden, it's unconscious, and it's something that we are investing in. First of all, that we're all capable of it. I think if we could wave a magic wand and have everybody understand that, that would change so much, because then we wouldn't divide the world into the good and the bad. And right, we would say th- there is a set of circumstances in which each one of us could and would do something that we, from this vantage point, would deem or term evil. And so, okay, then what? How does that then change how we think about other people's behavior? And then also how we are attuned to it? What are the precursors? How can we become more aware of that? Because I think when we don't talk about these things and they remain hidden, then we don't have language. And so if I notice behavior in my neighbor, I don't even know what to call it or who to say it to, right? Unless we have sort of a collective understanding that, yeah, we
Exactly.
are investing in this. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And this is the collective agreement. If we already call it the evil, then let's say it's a collective responsibility. And not knowing what to do or what to say is my investment in it. And it's not just so easy to say, okay, I don't know what to do. Yeah, but that's great. But you're a citizen, you're a mature person. So let's find a way. Like it's not enough to say, oh, this was the evil person that did X, Y, Z, and everybody around that person has nothing to do with it because it's just that evil person. That's too simple. And on that level, we will never solve it because it's not solvable because it's wrong. It's the wrong thinking. And it's so we need to work together to support each other to take the shares slowly out. What does it mean? My fragmented parts will be more integrated. So I invest less shadow energy in the so-called evil. And of course, when you say about being possessed, I think it's not just off the charts that first of all, externalized energy, the things that we don't experience consciously, create an energy field also. And we are living in this. And if somebody has very early trauma, or, of course, that energy can activate a lot of weak structural wounds in somebody. And so then it looks like possessed, but that's an interpretation of a deeper process that we can also interpret differently. But the fact is, it affects us all the time. And if I'm often very grumpy, and if I am often very envious, and if I nourish those tendencies, and I often invest in separation, the good and the bad, and talk badly about other people, I nourish that place, and I'm investing more of my money into that dimension. And if I live a different life, and if I look, okay, how can we find more common ground? How can we be more related? Can we be more compassionate or more curious, as you said, or more joyful? I create a different world. So this makes a difference. There's no passivity in the citizen. Oh, there's the
Yeah.
evil around and we just keep ourselves out of the way. No, no, we are
Right,
already in its way.
right,
way. So,
right. And investing in it and sanctioning it and yeah, making it a spectacle. And that has to be looked at too. Oh, that's so fascinating. That gave me goosebumps.
yeah, this is very powerful. I think
Mhm.
exactly here we should continue.
Okay.
But I think that's a very fascinating topic that also relates to many of the other things we spoke about before. This really, and it touched me also what you said about practicing joy. We can practice so many things and change our inner space. I think that was a very powerful share that you brought in, from your own experience.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's funny because you write a book about it, so you think like, okay, well then I know this thing because I wrote a book about it, but then it was after the book that I lived it, you know? And
Right.
so it's like, oh yeah, I was right over there when I said that thing. Let's do that.
Right, right. And that's also beautiful to say that there is no such a thing as an absolute knowing. You're not 100%
Right.
knowing joy just because you wrote the book.
Right.
You know some about it, but life teaches you
Right.
even more through the writing and then through the interactions with society and how it
Right.
develops into whatever it develops into.
Yeah, the living into it, as Rilke would say, right? Yeah.
Mm, yeah. So thank you very much. I enjoyed this. Amazing. The time flew by like it's so fast, and I look at the time and say, "Oh my, how did it happen?" And
I know.
I
Time
find it
warp. Time isn't
really
real.
engaging. And let's see if we can have another, like to zoom into this notion of evil and maybe different perspectives. Like how does this look like more psychologically seen and maybe religiously seen, and what are the mechanisms and what is our social responsibility?
Yes. How do we live? How do we live in it? How then shall
Mhm.
we live? Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. Let's do it.
fantastic. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure as always.
Thank you. This
I
was so
walk
fun.
away with my glowing neurons.
Me too. Yeah. What are we going to do with all the neuroplasticity now? It's exciting.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Point of Relation with Thomas Hübl. Stay connected and get updates about new episodes by visiting our website, pointofrelationpodcast.com, and by subscribing to the Thomas Hübl YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share about us with your community on social media. Thank you. We appreciate your support.